Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm your host, Gina Kazaza. Before we get started, quick invite to join our free Substack community. We got monthly book club. We got articles to boost your mental fitness and resilience. We got a group chat going on because growth is easier when you're not doing it alone. So come on over and join that Substack community. Also, if this show hits home, please leave a rating, share it, follow us on Instagram, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Now, one more thing before we dive in, quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Empowered Lit Literacy and Beyond. It's a 501c3 nonprofit bringing author visits and confident building programs to kids. Right now, only 30% of kids are reading at grade level. Gosh, that's a scary number. And confidence drops at the age of 7. Empowered Lit is changing that, but it takes partners like you. Literacy is the entry point. Confidence is the outcome. Learn how to support them in the show notes. Today's guest has spent 15 years operating in a high-stakes environment. We're working alongside NASA and elite U.S. Air Force Pararescue Special Operations Unit, where clarity under pressure isn't optional. He learned something most people miss. High performers don't struggle with motivation. They struggle with too many things feeling important. Relate to that. Here is today, he's the creator of Elite Action Framework, which I'm excited to talk about. Because what he is doing that's really interesting is that he is helping leaders cut the noise and execute when it matters most. We're totally going to get into that because I know many of you want to hear more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, without further introduction, I'm really excited to introduce you to John Mollura. John, thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate the opportunity, Gina. How are we doing today?
Oh my God, fantastic. I'm super excited to talk to you because what you do, who you've worked with and trained, and then what you're doing today, I think every single person that's listening to the show is going to benefit from this episode. Awesome. So I'm really excited. Let's just start with how you got into this. How did you get into working with NASA? How did you get into working with Pararescue? What exactly were you doing with them?
Yeah, so it all started over beer and wings, as a lot of good stories do in college. My buddies and I decided we were going to apply to this company that said, hey, work on the spacesuit for NASA. And it seemed like a great idea over beer and wings. Turns out I was the only one who did. And we kind of did it as a joke because it was we didn't do the best in school, right? I was happy with that solid 3.0 GPA in college. So anyone that thinks I'm an egghead 4.0 person, not your guy. So I applied and lo and behold, I got an interview with the company that makes the spacesuit for NASA. And I was like, surely this is a joke. So did the phone interview. Remember, this is back in the late 90s, in the 1900s. So there was no Zoom. I was on a phone call with the director of engineering. And we were talking and he goes, what's this about rock climbing on your resume? Because most people in engineering have they worked for Ford, they worked for Boeing, they, that's what all the smart people did. I, however, taught rock climbing for the Boy Scouts for a summer and ran a crew of umpteen people and just threw kids off the cliff all summer. And I thought it showed leadership. So I'm going to put it on there. That job is rock climbing. Director of engineering got to that and said, what's the deal with this? I gave him my spiel. He goes, hang on, someone just walked by that I want you to talk to. And remember, this is the 90s, no Zoom, and the phone just went dead. And I'm like, okay, is interview over? And this dude gets on the phone, doesn't introduce himself, just goes, hey, what do you think about rock climbing on Mars? And I said, I don't know, are you going to pay my airfare? I said that, I'm like, oh, that probably wasn't a good move, John. That wasn't professional. And the dude goes, get him down here. And that was it. And he disappeared. Director of engineering came back on and goes, okay, well, that's Skip Wilson, our director of test operations. Apparently, Skip would like to meet you. So we're going to put the interview for project management on hold and have you come down and meet with Skip. So came down, met with this guy named Skip. Turns out he was a special forces veteran of Vietnam. He was a PJ, pararescue in Vietnam. And he and I hit it off like a ball of fire. And he hired me for test operations. And within 4 hours of my first day in corporate America after graduating engineering, I found myself in an airport drinking a beer with Skip on our way to a government test facility. And that pretty much summed up the next 15 years of my life. And I asked Skip one time, I said, Skip, why did you hire me? And he goes, I don't need another egghead around here. He said, I need someone that's smart enough that I can send out into the field and not get himself or the team, or more importantly, me, killed. So I fit that bill. So that's how I ended up there. So it all started kind of as a joke over beer and wings, but here we are.
Wow. crazy to think, like, I mean, the fact that you guys were like, we're going to do this, but you were the only one that was like, actually did it, right?
Right.
I mean, it changed the trajectory of your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, and today, now tell us today what you're doing. And also talk about, like, was it a hard transition to get to where you are now? Like, did you know you were going into this?
No one's more surprised that I'm doing this than I am, because the company that I worked for when I started there in 2001, it was a small family-owned company. It had been in existence at that time for about 40 years. Had a huge track record of success with like government projects. And, like I said, they made the spacesuit. The project I got hired on for, we did the landing systems for the Mars rovers that landed in 2003. And about halfway through my time there, the 15 years I was there, it got bought by venture capitalists. So for audience members that aren't aware what venture capitalists do is they buy companies and their whole gig is to turn them around and make a lot of money. Due to some uniqueness of the company I worked for, they couldn't do that. So there were some financial things that went on in the background that were totally legal, but basically bled the company dry. And after 15 years, it became evident that they were no longer interested in the type of work that I excelled in. So I left and went to another company, and I'd been going through a lot of like personal changes for the better for years at that point, and finally just realized that engineering and that was out of alignment with who I was. So I actually left corporate engineering almost 9 years ago to the day that we're recording this, and actually went into commercial photography because I've been doing that as a side hustle all my life. That was always my creative outlet, and turned that into my full-time gig for a number of years. And then after COVID, I was realizing that people that were paying me these big dollars to do these photo shoots didn't have the confidence to even step in front of the camera. So I leaned into all the coaching and mentors that I'd had throughout the years to get them in front of the camera to build their confidence and just help them see things from a different perspective. And then I realized this actually feels really in alignment with who I am and who I've become. So it was really a journey, and it might seem disjointed, but what I did in test engineering for 15 years was our team's job was to make sure things did what they were supposed to do before, it put an aircrew member in danger, where we crashed a robot into Mars. So understanding that and being able to marry that systems level mentality is what made me successful in commercial photography. Because a lot of the people that could do the artistry of photography didn't really have that ability, or didn't excel in checking the box and understanding like what these like big Fortune 500 companies needed to have done. So I could bridge both gaps. So that's how I was successful there. And then I parlayed that again into my coaching and speaking.
Wow. Geez, I feel like 2 questions from this. I'm going to state both so I don't forget, but they're totally different. One, I feel like a lot of our listeners, I feel like people in general like lack confidence. I am running a kids camp this summer to increase I run a nonprofit, and
right. Awesome work, by the way, that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What we do is we increase literacy skills and self-esteem building in kids, because self-esteem is tanking at like the age of 7. It's it's wild. And so I'm running this camp to increase kids' to help build their self-esteem, and also obviously literacy, is big in what we do too.
Sure.
But like, I notice with adults, it's big in teens forget about it. Like when I do a lot of speakings with teens, and it's like it's like speaking to a wall in a sense, because they don't want to, they just, I don't know what it is in terms of like, I'm too cool or I'm too scared, or there's a lot going on right there. But then when they have to like write a testimony, they have to write about the experience. It's like I'm getting a diary entry. Like I'm like, wow, like they got it. They were listening like, oh my goodness. But to speak about it, to talk. And I notice the same thing like with adults, like being in the nonprofit world, I'm constantly having to be like, hey, you want to sponsor a kid for camp? Hey, you want to, people like, how do you do it? Like, how do you, I used to be a stand-up comic. It was like, how do you do it? Right. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it, because I was a child that didn't speak. Like, I was that middle schooler that like would not raise their hand. If you called on me, I was mute, like super low confidence and self-esteem. And all of a sudden something completely, the Navy SEAL program completely shifted my life, where like, it got me to understand about belonging and brought confidence. Like but I don't know how I could explain that to another human being. Like for you, how do you explain like being confident within yourself and getting out of here?
Yeah.
And when I'm pointing to my brain for those that aren't watching the video.
Yeah. So great question. It's one I get asked a lot of times. That's why it's one of the pillars of my 6 checkpoint framework is confidence. And we need to understand what the root cause a lot of times of lack of confidence is. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm not confident because my bank account's not here. I don't have this car. I don't have this job. It's all about the accolades or the award or the thing you get. And I would say that's actually not the reason why you probably lack confidence. And I always ask 2 questions when I'm speaking from an audience. I say, all right, if you tell someone, audience, that if you're going to do something and you commit to another person, do you do it? Raise your hand. And everyone's like, well, yeah, of course. I'm a man or a woman of my word. I say, all right, great. Love to hear that. That's what I thought. Next question. How good are you at keeping promises to yourself? And you want to watch hands go down quick. Ask that question, Gina. And the reason why that's so important is because whenever we keep our word to other people or commitments to other people, but we're continually breaking them to ourselves, it creates this tension in our mind that really scrambles it. And when we break promises to ourselves, our brain eventually gets enough information, enough data points, if you will, that we can't trust ourselves. And by definition, confidence is trust in your abilities. And I'm not talking about people that are arrogant. That's what a lot of people unfortunately assume confidence means.
Yes.
Is arrogance. And it's not. Arrogance is very outspoken, very me-centered, very, how can I make myself seem better than someone else? That's arrogance. And that's unfortunately what a lot of times gets labeled as confidence. Confidence is just a quiet ability to recognize that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. So if people want to increase their confidence, I have a real simple formula. A plus B equals C. A plus B equals C. Action plus bravery equals confidence. Because I want people to recognize that confidence is the outcome of something. It's not a prerequisite. And if people say, well, John, how am I going to take action? How can I be brave? I'm scared. I say, perfect, because you can't be brave without being scared. Because bravery is deciding to take action despite the fear.
Oh my God. So I'm going to be re-listening to the show before I do this kids camp, because I want to also, I think as you're saying this, I'm like, I want the kids to make that promise to themselves Monday. Like, because what they're doing is they're writing they're writing their own book and we are printing it for them.
Oh, right.
And I want them to be saying like, I'm going to have them say like, I will be making my own book this week. Right. And then on Friday, they're going to be performing and I'm going to say like, hey, like make that promise to yourself. And Friday, we're going to be delivering that, and I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So and with the topic of like you say, like writing a book, like that's what a lot of adults have an aspiration to write a book someday. Mm-hmm. And that's a big goal. Like that's awesome. It sounds like you're giving the students frameworks and everything to work on throughout the week. But with confidence, it's not necessarily about like doing those big goals, about like writing a book. Like sure, have that be your North Star. Mm-hmm. That's also one of the pillars of my framework is legacy. Like what's that North Star that you want? Because you're building your legacy moment to moment. It's not just something you look back on and be like, oh, there's my legacy. It's like, no, you have to be intentional. And the reason why I bring that up is people think like, well, I can't take action on writing a book. That's a big thing. And I'm like, I totally agree with you on that. So then it becomes the small, consistent actions that you step up to. That's actually what builds your confidence. Those are the little promises you need to keep to yourself. Like, and when I say little promises, I mean something like you promised your dentist you were going to floss every night, right? But how many people actually do that? Well, every time you go back on your word, every night when you don't floss, that's a little micro decision that your brain's keeping track of. I can't trust me. I don't pick my socks up like I told my wife I would. I don't close the cabinets like I told my wife I would. Those might be mine, but you get the point. It's not about like writing the book or doing the thing. It's about like the little moment to moment things that we have, these micro decisions we can make.
I love that. Now I am remembering, I told you I had a second question from what you said. I'm remembering. So back before you were talking about what you used to do for work, right? And how, you're trying to prevent things from going wrong, right? You're going through all this stuff. Like, I'm sure that it was a bit frustrating at times, right? Or maybe there were moments where like, I don't know,
I'm just throwing it. Like, did you ever feel like, gosh, I don't know if this is going to happen, or maybe like there was just a lot of failure, or just like, things not going right to get to the outcome.
Yeah.
And how do you, persevere to keep going without it being, and I should clarify, like, I get that that's your job, right? Yeah. But like, what if it's somebody that it's like starting a business or like, things like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I always like to point out to people is there's no such thing as perfect, right? We sabotage ourselves, like trying to grab onto this vapor of perfection. Like you might as well try to grab the smoke coming off a campfire, right? You have a better chance of doing that than actually grabbing perfection, because perfection doesn't exist in the real world. Like it doesn't. Perfection by definition is absolutely zero flaws. And even when I was working in the space program, whether it was going on a rocket or going on the F-35, it didn't matter. They never told you it had to be exactly this amount. They would always say it needs to be this plus or minus some tolerance, because there's no such thing as perfect. So for people that, are wanting to start a business or take action, the important thing to recognize is, let me not focus on perfection, because perfection is exhausting trying to get to. So I do a lot of work with the first responder community, and they're like, well, lives are literally on the line with what we do. We need to strive towards perfection. And I say, I'm going to challenge you on that. What you need to strive for is not perfection. You need to strive for excellence. Excellence is about doing the best that you can with the information you have available, the training you have available, the reps you've gotten in that you had the opportunity to do. That's a mindset of excellence. And that will enable you to shift out of it has to be perfect to let me do the absolute best that I can. And whenever the thing is done, I look back on it, do a hot wash, do a debrief, and figure out, without the ego, what could have gone better. And now how can I build the reps in going forward to do better next time? Because we never rise to the occasion. What we actually do is we fall to our level of training.
Right. Yes. And and that's, I love that point in terms of, I remember I used to work for Ralph Macchio, and he said to me at one point, he said, Gina, projects are just abandoned. Because eventually you could always fix it. You could always change it. You always make improvements, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually you just have to put it out there and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so true. Like, I look at my children's book and I'm like, oh, I could change this and I could change that. Sure. It's like, it's already out there. Like, you're done.
Yeah.
Because you can really, and I think too, it's like, then you never put anything out. You never get anything, which going to tank your confidence, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And when we look at perfectionism, like overthinking, perfectionism, procrastination, they actually all have the same root cause. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of people realize this. The root cause of overthinking, perfectionism, procrastination is actually fear. It's fear. They are these brave delays that we put up in front of us to stop putting something out into the world because we're so scared of, pick your narrative. What will people think of me? What if it's not right? What if it's too much work? What if it's too little? Like whatever it is, when we hide behind perfectionism and say, no, it needs to be just a little bit better. It's like, well, does it really? Like, there's a much different level of like excellence you have to approach if you're doing brain surgery as you do if you're writing a book, right? Like,
yeah,
you can edit a book. They can have other there's difference. So if we find ourselves like getting mired in perfectionism, procrastination, and overthinking, it's like, ask yourself, what am I actually scared of? What is stopping me from doing that? And if you can be honest with yourself, then you can really separate the data from the drama and be like, what's real? A lot of times it's these stories that we're just telling ourselves in our head.
Now, you mentioned earlier too, like how you lose confidence, right? Breaking promises to yourself or saying things. So how does one start building it back? And how long does it take to like build that confidence and back?
Yeah. So I can give you a definite answer on one is you start building it back in small, consistent steps, right? So small, consistent actions are what are going to win the day for you with building your confidence back. So pick that low-hanging fruit. Pick the easy things. Like I'll use fitness because that's always a goal that so many people want to do. I want to be in better shape. I want to lose weight, whatever it is. So if someone came to me and said, hey, John, I want to get in better shape, I'd be like, awesome, high five. What are we doing? They're like, well, I'm gonna start waking up at 4 a.m. I'm going to do 100 burpees and I'm going to run 5 miles. I'm like, wow, okay. How much do you currently run? How many burpees do you currently do? Oh, I haven't exercised since high school 25 years ago. I'm like, all right, time out. Let's maybe just do put in 1,000 steps more than you did yesterday, right? And then do that for a week. And then let's build that up and let's keep that promise to yourself. Like that's the key is having promises that are easy to do. Like if you woke up at 4 a.m. and tried to do 100 burpees and run 5 miles, like if you completed that, you're going to be so sore and frustrated and exhausted and hobbled for the next week. You're going to be like, screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. So that's the answer to your first question is start small, consistent actions, because what that does is then that flows into one of my other pillars, which is momentum. And momentum is that key that enables people to keep going, right? Like think of a train coming out of a station. It takes forever to get going. It's like ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. But once it starts moving, it starts getting those reps in of the engine going, it'll literally go through a wall. And that's the same with us. So to rebuild your confidence takes small, consistent actions. And then to answer your other question, how long it takes, I don't know. That there's so many things that factor into that, obviously. Yeah. And just to be clear, like what I'm talking about is a lack of confidence just because we're not used to keeping commitments to ourselves. There's a whole other, aspect of this, which I don't get into as a coach. I ask people, I take stock of where we're at and we come up with a game plan to move forward. Like I'm a firm believer, and I refer a lot of times, a lot of my clients to counselors too, because they help unpack the stuff. So I'm not talking about that lack of confidence that might be from like a trial transition or a tragedy that happened in the past. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about the things that are moving forward, what is under our control.
We're going to stop right here as we're going to give a shout out to one of our other sponsors, Sphere Emoji. Quick question for you. When was the last time you gave someone a gift that actually meant something? Not another candle or another box of chocolates, a gift where every time they see it, they think of you. That's Sphere Emoji. Plushies with personality. It's saying, I got this for you because you're loved. Or I got this for you because you make me laugh. You're my giggles. You're my Lulu. They are soft, they're comforting, and a daily reminder that that person matters. With Valentine's Day coming up, Lulu is the perfect gift, mini or pillow size. And yes, the pillow size is as comfortable as it sounds. It's my favorite. So go on over in the show notes and find a Sphere emoji that matches your vibe, or just go to sphereemoji.com. Now back to our show.
Yeah, and I'm laughing with the gym because this is always a struggle for me, but I'm laughing too because it's like, I have that hard charging, like, I joined a Navy SEAL prep program, haven't exercised in 10 years. I'm like, let me join this program.
Oh boy.
It was like, what was I thinking? But when it was time to then transition out and, stick with fitness and go to the gym, man, was that a struggle for me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I spent 4 hours in the gym my first day because I was like, I don't even know any of these machines. I don't even know how this works. And I was like literally asking people, I'm like, can you show me? But then it was like, then I stopped wanting to go. And I was like, just show up. You just have to walk in, check in, walk out. That's it. I'm just teaching you how to show up, right? You don't even have to do an exercise. And then the following week, I was like, we're going to do a machine, right? And then we're going to now it's like, and it was funny because this morning I was like, didn't want to go. It's every morning I don't want to go.
Sure.
But I was like, we said we were going. We're going, And I did notice, Coach Mack did say, one of the best ways to keep the commitment to yourself is scheduling it in your calendar. Because when it's scheduled in your calendar, your brain is already going okay, I have it. It's locked in. Let's go. Versus it being on a to-do list, because the time, when it's going, what's happening, which I guess is a brain thing. And,
Yeah. And what you're speaking to is intentionality, right? I mean, that's the key. And that's why I always talk with people that I'm coaching. They're like, well, I didn't get to do this. I'm like, well, where was it on your calendar? They're like, it wasn't. I say, okay, it needs to go on your calendar. They're like, yeah, but John, it's only going to take me 20 minutes. I'm like, I don't care. What's your point? They're like, it just shows up as a little bar in my calendar. I'm like, right. But you have to be intentional with your time, because if you're not, it's just going to evaporate.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if folks are aware, but there's a multi-bajillion-dollar industry out there that is designed to take your time. It's called social media. It's called the internet, right? There are some very smart people out there trying to get the number one commodity that we have no replacement for on this earth. And that is your time. So if we can be aware of that and build in intentionality of like, this is when I'm going to do it. And how am I going to set myself up for success? Like, if I know like I'm easily distracted, okay, put your phone in another room. Turn the notifications off on your computer. Well, what if my family needs to get a hold of me, John? Cool. There's technology out there that allows you to only have your family members get through to you while you're working. Like, stop coming up with excuses and start figuring out a solution.
100%. Yeah. I think we live in this excuses world where, and I actually do want to ask, because I mentioned it in the bio when I was talking to, when I was introducing you, you said high performers don't lack motivation. They struggle with too many things feeling important, right? What exactly do you mean by that? I would love to dive deep into that.
Yeah. So I'm sure we can all agree that there's no shortage of information coming at us every moment of the day, whether that's your phone dinging or, if you're leading people. And by the way, leaders don't have to be corporate officers, right? They don't have to be military officers. Like, anybody that is in charge of guiding someone, like if you stay at home and are raising your kids and your family, you're a leader. Like, people are looking to you for answers. So there's no shortage of information coming to you. Where a lot of people get stuck is everything seems important. And when everything seems important, like we get locked up. We can't do everything. So then we just become paralyzed and don't do anything a lot of times. Or we pick something that's easy to do, right? But isn't going to move the needle forward. So the framework that I teach people about how to actually separate all that noise can be important things, but we can only do one thing at a time. So there's no such thing as multitasking.
Coach Mack used to say that all the time. He used to say that all the time. Like, no such thing as multitasking.
Right. And if people are disagreeing with me right now, I'll explain what's happening in your brain. Your brain is not multitasking. It's doing these real quick switches, right? And when you're completely changing direction, what do you lose? Momentum, right? How do we build momentum? Be intentional. Focus on something. That's why focus is another one of my pillars, right? As is momentum and action. So the way we separate out the noise is a framework. And all you need to remember is HIT, right? HIT. And the H stands for halt. Like, actually hit pause and take stock of what's going on. Don't just go to the next thing you think is important. Call a timeout, take a couple breaths, and figure out what is the information that you're working with, right? Like, when I was in engineering school, like, we'd get these big, crazy, long word problems and they'd be terrifying. And I had an instructor tell me, he's like, what you need to do, the first thing you need to write down is write down everything that's a known. What do you know? So if you find yourself with a lot of noise, listeners, remember HIT. First thing is you halt. Just hit pause, take stock of what you have. Once you get it written down, and there's a lot of power in writing it down, go to the I and hit. Figure out what is actually important. And if you can actually get everything down, you can a lot of times start to figure out what is actually important in here. Like, picking someone up at the airport, that's pretty darn important. That's got a time limit on it, right? Putting in the order for, having your groceries delivered, well, you got some flexibility on that. Maybe not the thing to be doing right now.
Right.
But that's easier to do than like maybe having a critical conversation with someone. Like, if there's a deadline for your business, why are you putting that off to the last minute, right? So halt, hit pause, figure out what's truly important, write it down. I'm a big fan of writing down. I got notebooks everywhere here. Write it down. And then the T of the HIT framework is take decisive action. Like, General Colin Powell has a 70-30 mentality. He always says, like, leaders, if you have at least 70% of the information, you have enough to make an informed decision and move forward and then adjust going forward. Anything less than 30%, that's reckless, right? So if you have 70% of the information, just follow what General Powell said and take decisive action. So to recap, what to do when you have a lot of noise in your head: HIT, halt, what's going on. Just take a moment, take a breather. I, what's important, right? Figure out what is truly important, what has a time thing, what has an importance thing. And then T, take decisive action. And then be okay with giving yourself grace and going again and iterating it.
Wow, that was fantastic. I really like that. It's easy to remember too.
Yeah.
It's, which I really like. You've given so much. I'm curious, when it comes to high performers, there could be burnout, right? And I want to know, like, what's the difference between burnout and just like being under pressure?
Yeah. So burnout is just consistent pressure that doesn't let up.
Okay.
Right. Like, we can handle pressure, right? But in short bursts. And obviously that's
what's short?
I was going to say that That's different for everybody. And it's also different for the type of pressure that you're under, right? Like when I was in test operations, like there were certain things that we did that were extremely potentially hazardous, right? So when you're under that level of stress of like physical harm for yourself or your team, like that wears you down pretty quick.
Yes.
As opposed to like, I don't know, a stress of like knowing there's like a big meeting coming up and you're going to have to review budgets and get yelled at by some finance person. Totally different.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to, I mean, what it all comes down to is, yes, there's the baseline level of intensity of it, but then there's the time under tension. Yeah, it's like, look, like you and I are both drinking coffee right now. It's early on a Monday morning. Like I could hold this coffee mug, which is sadly very low on coffee, probably for a couple hours, right? If I put it out and held my arm way out, I'd be able to hold it for less time because now it's under more tension. But then there's also that time factor. How long are you under tension? So those are all things to be aware of. And then the other component to that is, this is a big one that a lot of adults especially misses. When you're out of alignment with what is truly important to you, that's a amplifier to burnout. So like when I was in engineering, like it was very much out of alignment with who I was becoming. That amplified the effects of all the tension and stress that I was under and led to burnout.
It's interesting. And the reason why I really want to bring this up too is because like last week for me, the stress I put myself, create my own stress and put myself in with this kids camp. And also with we do author visits and then we're doing this kids camp. And there was a bunch of other things that was going on. It was just like too much. Right. And we have very little time because the school year's over, camp's coming up, like all this stuff. And it's a very small team. And I'm like thinking of everything we have to do. And this is where the pressure is mounting. And then when I was able to be like, just stop, just one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Focus on the insurance, focus on getting the nurse, focus on this, right? And don't think about, and I teach this with the kids all the time when I go to school, because I was them when they were like looking at this entire 20 question test, right? And you're like super overwhelmed and frustrated and stressed because you're thinking of all 20 questions, right? And you can't even get through the first one because you're stressed and you don't know the answer, right? And I'm like, just focus on that one question, right? It's not about getting it right. It's just getting it done, right?
Yep.
And then go to the next one and then go to the next one, right? Same thing with like reading a book, giant book. Don't think about the giant book. Just go with one page, one chapter, right? And then it like goes together. But I also think like that amounts to, especially when you have like a deadline or something like that, and you have like, that's the pressure that leads to the burnout where you're just like, but again, you create that. And it's not like someone got kidnapped and I have to like, there's a clock before they die, right? And that's a whole different level. I don't know if I'd be able to handle that when I barely can handle kids camp.
Right.
But there's a lot of noise that's going on up here. Now I need to know, like, how do we shut that off?
Yeah. Well, you actually just said the HIT framework, and I don't even know if you realized it. Like last week when you said, I said stop.
Yeah.
Like I just had to figure out what the next important thing was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but it's that halt, like put your hand up, that we don't do because especially as high performers, like we want to go, like we are wired for going. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is like just to pump the brakes and just collect your thoughts and figure out what the next right step is. What's truly important.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do think that the halt does shut the brain as I'm really thinking about, you do, and you're like, okay, stop. And for me, it's like Coach Mack used to say, like, you got to open up the prefrontal cortex. You got to, and that can be go outside, go for a walk, no electronics, like, journal or go clean. Cleaning is like, whoa, So it's just like understanding and knowing like how to just pause and stop, redirect to be able to see clearer. And then once you do that, it's like, okay, like, then you take action to what you need, right? To get what's done.
Yeah.
I want to know, because you talked about a lot of your frameworks.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you had 6, right? What would you say, is there like a most important one? Do you start with confidence? Is there one that is particular that you have to start with, or an important one? I mean, I know they're all very important, but
Sure. Yeah, it wouldn't have made it in the framework if it wasn't important. I'd say the reason I always start with the legacy one.
Okay.
And people are always like, why legacy? Like, doesn't that take forever? I'm like, and I mentioned this before, that's your North Star.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you want to go. And a lot of people get hung up then on like the individual steps to like make it all the way there. It's like, no. That's your North Star. That's what's going to give you your heading. So as you're going through and taking these small, consistent actions, you get to look up and orient yourself. Like, where do I need to course correct to keep making it towards that? Because otherwise, like, we're just going to be out there, just kind of roaming around and blowing whichever way the wind goes. And I was very guilty of this in my life. I never liked to set goals because I was always scared. Oh my gosh, what if I don't hit them? Right. And I used to have very low confidence in my life. So I would never set goals. Like, I would never set those North Stars because I thought, oh great, this is just going to be another thing that I screw up. Right. But I didn't have that mentality of giving yourself grace and going again and understanding. Like, I was very perfectionistic. So like, we'd be doing these test plans. Like, so you mentioned like the Air Force Special Operations I had an opportunity to work with. So we were doing a project with Air Force Pararescue, and it was for something that had this insane requirement to be able to lift up an MRAP, which is big armored vehicle, and there really wasn't anything out there that could lift it and lift it as high as they need it. So like, we were taking something from the space technology that we had and applying it to help pararescue do their job. Well, the system we were working on is very high pressure, like, and I mean pressure like as in like kaboom pressure, like, and also pressure of like getting it right. And like, when I would write these test procedures, I'd get stuck in this perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just revise it. And the story I told myself was, well, I don't want anyone to get hurt if I screw this test procedure up. Like, I need to know where all the blast calculations are. Like, if this thing cuts loose and doesn't operate right. But what I never did, Gina, is I never actually got input from someone else. I could have handed it to my colleague, Frank. Be like, hey, Frank, can you get your red pen out and bleed all over this procedure, please? I never did that because I was so scared about what that would say about me. He wouldn't have thought less of me. He would have been like, oh, here you go, bro. Like, fix that. You missed that. So I say all that is because that's how perfectionism can really manifest itself. It's like, I want to do such a good job. It's like, well, does it need to be that level of fidelity? Yeah, don't kill any pararescue men, John. Okay, cool. Now, what can I do to be more expeditious in getting this done and honoring my employer? So that's why I talk about like setting that North Star, not as something like to fail to get to and like getting stuck in all these stories of perfectionism, but start with that North Star of like, where do I want to be financially? What kind of relationships do I want to have? How do I want to be making myself a leveled up human? What do I want things to look like? And that's your North Star. And then that's how you filter all your decisions going forward. Is this decision going to help me serve the future version of myself that's going to be that?
Now, I have a question in terms of that. Now, let's go to the other side of it in terms of, this is me, those that have delusional confidence. Like, I have delusional confidence. Like, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be a bestseller. But the thing is like, I do, like, people are like, wow, you really did this. Kids can't fast. Like, you should have waited another year. And I'm like, kids can't wait. I was like, we have a literacy crisis. I'm going for it. Right. Mm-hmm. Whether we get the goal is 50, whether we get 50, we have 10 so far, whether we get 10 or 50, I don't care. I'm helping 10 kids. Right. And it's like, I'm just going to put out there. Right. But I get like this delusional confidence. Like, when I used to do stand up and I'm like, I'll get there, where I ended up not wanting to continue. But when I was starting stand up, I was like, Madison Square Garden, selling out. I'm like, but it was like setting that, practicing, showing up, going to the open mics, doing the shows. I mean, I did get the opportunity to open for Nick Swartzen. I did a couple of shows with Whitney Cummings. Like, I was like, oh, but at the same time, then I kind of was like, new North Star, let's talk about like why people kind of, or talk two things, like why you talked about why they don't want to set that North Star. And again, it's like failing. And I don't think for myself, like when I didn't hit that North Star, like I didn't hit the bestseller, it's not that I failed. It's just, I went in a different direction, right? Yeah. But I shot for something, right? Yeah. Now, what about like the delusional confidence in terms of like you're never achieving it in terms of not like never achieve, like Like, I feel like for myself, like every like huge goal, right? It hasn't always been hit, right? And then sometimes that can just be a little you're just like kind of demoralizing. And it's kind of like, oh my God, when am I going to get my break? Like, I'm shooting for this. I'm working towards it.
Right.
You know, I've been at it for years. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. And a lot of that can come down to just being honest with yourself. Like, is this still the goal I want? Or why did I want that goal in the first place? Right. And so there's a lot of things to unpack all of that. So like, for instance, like we'll take your thing of like Madison Square Gardens. Like if that's your North Star, do a lot of people get to do that? No. But I remember my friend Paige told me something years ago before I started doing photography full time. Said, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I could make a living doing this. She said, well, someone has to. Why not you? Right? Someone has to. Why not you? So I took that, and the key is when you set that North Star, take the actions to actually achieve it. Don't just say you want to have a best-selling book. Like, who are the coaches, mentors? What are the feedback I could get? Who are the people I could learn from to help me achieve that? Who are the people I could learn from to get to Madison Square Gardens? How can I leverage that? Am I putting in the reps? Am I putting in the practice? Like, am I making all this? Here it comes again. The small, tiny actions, moment to moment, day to day, that are going to help me reach that. And if not, then you need to be honest with yourself. Is that really where you want to go?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I think that's why I pivoted so much. I'm like, I don't want that anymore.
But here's the beautiful part about all that, Gina. And this is something my mentor, Skip, used to tell me, the guy that hired me. He would say, one good test is worth 1,000 opinions. Right? Because I always knew he was getting frustrated in the meetings when he would like get up and start pacing back and forth. And that's what he would say, because we'd be in these meetings and someone would be arguing something like, well, what if the secondary landing site's out and there's a windstorm at the third landing site and 3 parachutes are out? And he'd stand up and be like, you know what? One good test is worth 1,000 opinions. I'm tired of listening to all you guys talk about this. Let's go out there and actually try this and see what happens and quit talking about it.
I like that. That's a good line. I really like that a lot.
Hit a lot of them.
What do you think people are doing, I guess every day that's destroying their performance?
Social media, their phones, straight
100%.
up.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Put your damn phone down.
Yeah, that's very true. I give myself like an incentive where I'm like, okay, you do this and then you get like, and then I do put a timer on it. There are times where I'm like, you've exceeded the timer. And I'm like, one more video. And I'm like, no. Like, I literally am having these conversations with myself. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you mentioned it a couple of times, putting the phone away, like all that stuff. I mean, it is a serious addiction.
Yeah.
Like, scary.
Yeah. And I'm obviously not an addiction specialist, but with anything, whether it's putting your phone down, exercising, working on your business plan, the filter people need to run through. That's why I always say, like, figure out that legacy pillar first, is because that is what you run all your decisions through. Like, is this decision that I make right now going to help me serve that future version of myself that I say I want to be? Yes or no? Like, it's binary. Is this going to help me become the person I want to be? Is it going to help me have the relationships I want to have? It's going to help me be in the financial position I want to be. And if the answer is no, then, and you still do it, then you have to own the fact, be like, well, I'm deconstructing my confidence right now. Right?
You know, there's so much, like, listening to you. Like, I think one of the biggest things I'm getting personally from talking to you is, like, throughout the day, halting and asking myself certain questions.
Yeah.
Like, is what I'm doing right now or so far in my day helping future me, helping me hit that North Star, helping my confidence, right? And if not, like, why? And what can I do to get back on track right now in this moment? You know, I think that we don't ask ourselves these questions. We don't, like, we're just so focused on output, go. It's a little different for me because I'm single and I have no kids. I have, it's just me, right? But I know when I go help out with my nephew, he's 4, it's very different where there's a whole bunch of noise, right? It's like I specifically get up like 3 hours before him. So I know I got 3 hours to work, right? Yep. Normally I get up, first thing I do when it's just Gina, and exercise. Don't do that with him because there's no work, right? When I have him. But what I can do is I can exercise with him when he's awake, right? So I could get my morning exercise in. But it's like I'm always focused on me and the goals, right? But at the same time, I also don't have a family. For those that do have a family where the noise is really loud, how do they get to them and shut off the noise?
Yeah. So I'm on the other end of that equation. So my wife and I have 3 kids.
Okay.
And it's quiet now because they're all teenagers. Like our oldest is getting ready to graduate high school in a couple weeks. So it's quiet. Like we have to like be like, hey, anybody want to hang out kind of thing. But going back, 12, 15 years ago when the kids were young, like then it becomes going back to intentionality. Like that's when I started my first business. Like I think we had think here. When I started my first business, we had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And I was still working full time and would be gone for weeks at a time, like doing test operations. Like we would be gone from like Antarctica to England. And I tell she'd be like, when are you coming home? I'm like, damned if I know. Like it might be home. I'll be home soon if the thing, energetically disassembles unintentionally, which means blew up. But anyway, I digress. During those seasons when it was literally all hands on deck and it was all my wife and I could do to like keep the tiny humans alive and fed and where they needed to be. Because my wife worked full time too. She's an educator. She's a high school teacher. So
easy job.
Shout out to all my educators out there. So then it became like at that point, like it was very clear, like I did not want to be doing this job anymore for a whole host of reasons. So when I'd be on travel, I'd be out at Jet Propulsion Laboratory working on my business plan, starting my business, filling out all the paperwork at like 3 or 4 in the morning because, the time zone shift helps being from Delaware to California. But like that was my North Star. So it's like, when can you work that time in? When you can be intentional with that time? Mm-hmm. There were a lot of nights where my wife and I didn't go to bed till way later than we should have because we prioritized the relationships. Again, North Star, relationship with my wife is paramount. So is it worth it to stay up, past our bedtime, maybe have an extra glass of wine and finish that movie or just keep talking when the kids were young and then drag our butts out of bed in the morning? Yeah, it was. And now here we are, married for almost 23 years because that was our North Star. It's like, were we willing to sacrifice some sleep? Sure. So it goes down to how can I make use of the time intentionally with what I have?
100%. That's fit. Yeah. And congrats, married that long. That's amazing. And also the kids, man, high school teacher. Oh, bless your wife. It's a lot. So what do you have for us, for our listeners, that we can do on an everyday basis to tackle those challenges that are inevitably going to come our way?
Yeah. Great question. And I just want to leave them with that HIT framework. Halt. Just stop. Take a breath, like, because we always have our breath with us. Like, even if it's just a couple breaths in, couple breaths out, just halt. Take stock of the situation. What's important to you? What's the important information? That's the I in HIT. Halt, important information. Take stock of it. Write it down if you have to. And then once you figure out what is truly important, then the T in HIT is take decisive action. Like, what's that next step I need to do? And then you come back around and guess what? You keep doing that. Pause, get that important information, take action again.
Thank you so much, John. You were fantastic. I think this was a great episode. I really hope our listeners get out as much as I got out of it. Now, as a leadership coach, tell us, you do all civilians, like everybody, like all different people, or is it just you do businesses too, or just individuals? Yeah.
So I primarily work with leaders individually, one-on-one. And I have everything from, full up coaching, where it's like, we get in, talk every couple weeks about coming up, what's you need to do to get where you want to go. Then I also do what I call navigation checks. And people at real high levels of leadership love these because they are 15-minute check-in calls every week. There's no fluff. It is truly cutting through the noise. It's like, all right, what were the 3 goals we talked about last week? Where are you at? Did you do them? Yes or no? If you say yes, we high five through the computer, right? If not, I just ask a question, no judgment. Why not? Like, what was the story you told yourself that let yourself off the hook? Because last week when we talked, this was one of 3 most important things you need to do in the next, 168 hours. You didn't do it. Why? What story did you tell yourself? Is that story true? No? Okay. Let's put it on the list next week, or do we need to jettison it? Then it's like, all right, what are the next 3 things we're talking about next week? boom, 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 boom. Good seeing you. Godspeed. Good luck. We'll check in next week, because there's nothing like accountability to hold you, to get you moving.
I love that. That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm going to put it is for everyone listening. It's in the show notes. Getting in touch with John. If you guys want to talk with him, sign up for some coaching, connect. It's all there in the show notes. And thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. And just one final parting thing. Mm-hmm. I have a free masterclass for people.
Awesome.
On my website, it's johnmollura.com/free stuff. It's called The Navigators. It's all about helping people shift out of autopilot and into awareness. Because so much as we talked about today, another way to say it is we're on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Because how do we shift out of that? How do we halt and get into awareness? And then also it teaches you how to get out of that judgmental mindset that we have, that inner critic when we're aware and judgment. Mm-hmm. How do we become aware and curious? Because that's a seeker mentality, and that's what's going to enable people to get where they're going. So johnmollura.com/free stuff, download the Navigators masterclass and get those questions to move you into a seeker mindset for free.
I'll also throw that in the show notes so that you guys can I'll just write masterclass and the link to it, so you guys can just jump right into it if you are interested in signing up for that masterclass. It sounds fantastic. Thank you again, John. You were amazing.
Thanks, Gina. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye.
Of course. For everyone that's listening, like, share, comment, subscribe. Become a Substack member for those extra goodies that only our Substack member get, and join the book club. It is completely free. We are currently reading It's Not All About Me by Robin Drake, who's been on the show before. So come and join us. Thank you guys so much.